Thank you for being here, Rajan. You know me, I'm Manish at WaterBridge. You know Anjali, my partner as well. We both will try and run this panel with you. It's pretty cliched to talk about a speaker guest doesn't need any introduction, and yet people end up introducing them anyway. But honestly, for this audience, I honestly say that you really don't need any introduction. People know you here. So we're gonna just jump into it, if it's okay with you. And I'm gonna off the bat, start with something that's a little bit more personal, to your own career, and that's also links to the theme of the panel, the summit, which is RevItUp. We're talking about, on one hand, value creation versus, valuation, revenues and profits, how to build sustainable companies. But we're also talking about how professionals and founders are able to scale their own personal dimensions in life, which is a trait that we see successful founders do have or have to have as they scale their companies. So I'm going to start with something personal. As I said, in your career has got a lot of diversity, solving big problems as a McKinsey partner for all kinds of clients across the world, to building businesses for large tech companies in, at that time, almost frontier market like India, South Asia, with Microsoft, with Dell. I know Dell was still trying to establish its feet in this part of the world when you were helping them. And of course, Google. If I dare say, you've helped add growth wings to Google's journey in India, South Asia, Southeast Asia, to then being a prolific angel investor, to now being also a fund investor at Sequoia and Surge. The question for you is, how have you learned to pivot your own life as you have navigated all of these very different kinds of professions and be successful at all of it?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, thanks for hosting me, Manish and Anjali, and I hope that founders are learning a lot from the summit. Look, so I think, I've had a very simple principle, Manish, which is, do what you love and do it for as long as you love. But as long as you're doing it, you better give it 200%. And, the changes, quite frankly, I joined McKinsey Management Consulting. I was coming out of Stanford, and this was a time when I really wanted to work for Ford or General Motors, but they didn't hire non-Americans. So, I just joined investment banking or consulting, but, I really enjoyed McKinsey and, did it for a long time in the Chicago office. But I left consulting because I really wanted to try something different. In many ways, sort of stopped having fun in it. And I always envied, my clients who ran these big companies. And so I said, look, let me go figure out if I can be an operator. So I did that then for 15 years, across 3 companies, as you said, Google being the longest stint. And I really loved it, right? And, I mean, it was a huge change. I mean, it was a massive change. I mean, it's a different career, right? You go from consulting to being an operating leader. And then I knew, though, because I always had this passion for startups. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Most of my friends are entrepreneurs. My wife's an entrepreneur, as you know. Everybody's an entrepreneur. So, I've been angel investing for a long time. And I knew that at some point I wanted to see if I could sort of do investing as a career. But I didn't think it would, I thought maybe I'd do it later, but then Sequoia and Surge happened. Shailendra talked to me about what he was launching with Surge, and I really joined Sequoia for Surge. I thought it was a super, super interesting platform that was being built. So for me, it's really not been, something I've consciously thought about. I've got to change. I just do something for as long as I love it, but when I'm doing it, I'll do it, give it 100%. But then when I stop, then I try to sort of say what's next, right? And then try to figure out. And through the course of that, I think is a couple of important things, right? One is you've got to love it. I mean, you just have to love it, right? And if you're building a company, you better love it. And number one. I think number two, you got to do it for a really long time. It's very interesting, Manish. I mean, I joined Dell, and and then I sort of built Dell India. We took it from $250 million to $800 million in 10 quarters. Then I joined Microsoft as a $1 billion software business. But quite frankly, I didn't know how to run scale businesses. Maybe like 5-6 years into running these big P&Ls, right? Because it's very different. So I think you've got to do it for a long time. And I mean, I basically was in operating roles for about 15 years. And I'd say probably the last 5 years is where I really knew how to do it. But even then, I was sort of learning every day. So I think just having this incredibly long-term perspective of, doing something for a long time so that you can get better at it, right? Because lots of people think that they can learn something in a year or two. You really can't learn anything in a year or two, right? So it takes time to be very good at what you're doing. And probably the last, like, investing is the same thing, right? I mean, I had invested in several hundred companies. So I sort of thought I knew how to do, seed stage investing, but I really knew nothing. Because, when you do it as for real, with like serious money, I mean, it's a business, right? And so, I mean, even now, I mean, I just learn every single day. So, I really believe, Manish, that, every single day you have to get better, every single day, right? And actually, it doesn't take a lot. It just takes for you to be humble. It takes for you to really keep your eyes open. It keeps, and I have this very simple principle, Manish, that I am not the smartest guy in the room. And if I ever get into a situation where I am the smartest guy in the room, it's time for me to leave, because I'm going to just stop developing, right? So, I mean, and all these companies I work with, my Google team was literally like, orders of magnitude smarter than I was, and then, all my colleagues at Sequoia, my gosh, they're so much better than I am. But that's what, that's what makes you better, right? So it's a bunch of these different things that I've learned over the years, but I think doing things for a really long time and having this sort of learning mindset, this growth mindset, like in our startup ecosystem over the last couple of years, with all this success, we've started seeing a lot of hubris, right? Hubris is the killer. It just kills success, because all of a sudden you're living, in a world that really doesn't exist. Let's face it, none of us are that good, right? So anyway, long answer to your question, Manish.
It was a question that a lot can be said, especially from somebody like you, and you shared some quite interesting nuggets. You didn't add humility, which I know has always been part of you, despite all the amazing things you've done. So if you add humility to what you said, it makes tons of sense. Thank you, Rajan, for sharing that. Anjali, I think you wanted to ask something, Rajan, off the bat. So why don't you go?
Rajan, I just want to take you back and rewind a little bit to when you actually started angel investing, and we were trying to pull a number out in the run up to this, and I think it was 150, 200. We're not quite sure how many deals you did, but just take us through the first 10, 20, and what was that pivotal moment when you actually realized this is going to become like a secular trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really know, when when it became a secular trend, but what I do know is, I left Microsoft because I was going to do something else. And then between Microsoft and Google, I pretty much invested all of my sort of savings into startups. After that point, the interesting thing is, you have to believe.
Are you saying Microsoft doesn't pay well in India?
No, I actually invested a lot, Manish. And that's, like right after that, I became like apparently some top angel investor. But look, I think maybe the question, rephrase the question, Anjali, is, maybe the question is, when did I become an India bull? Because quite frankly, the startup ecosystem is a microcosm of the India story. Now, of course, I invest across India and Southeast Asia. But, I think it was probably like after I'd been at few years at Dell, because, what I saw was just this extraordinary young talent, right? And at the end of the day, what does India really have? India has this extraordinary talent, right? Because you take 1% of 1.4 billion, and it's 14 million people, right? You take 0.01%, it's 1.4 million people. So if you say that there are, I don't know, 10 million really, really smart people who are agile, who are ambitious, who want to do incredible things, and if you have an unfair percentage of those folks as a nation, you're going to win, right? Because so I'd say, that's when I really started, and of course it helped that I didn't quite understand at the time, 2007 and 8, that GDP per capita was so low in India, nobody had any money. I used to always wonder, why was the Dell business only like 800 million, not 8 billion? Well, because like nobody could afford to buy PCs at the time, right? But that's when it really started. And then, in terms of angel investing, for me, by the way, the reason I angel invested was because it was just a massive learning accelerator for me. right? When I ran Google, it was very interesting. My team would come and tell me all kinds of stories about all kinds of segments. But the reality is, I knew like, I made all these investments in these companies. So whether it was fintech or edtech or whatever it is, I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Because let me tell you, what's really happening. So, I love the learning part of it, right? And then also it gave me an opportunity to get to know interesting founders and really learn about, how they evolve and so on and so forth. But I would say, late, probably by 2013, 14, I was all in. If this thing didn't work, I was going to be bankrupt. I'm completely bankrupt. So, at one level, it's, you just got to go all in and say, you know what, it's going to work. It's what entrepreneurs do, right? All these founders on the call, I assume everybody is all in, right?
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And Rajan, I'm going to butt in here because I was trying to remember. There is definitely depth in this, right? 2009 or 10, I heard you at a business school graduation ceremony. And I remember the energy you carried. And you basically, your message was to, I don't know, whatever, 200 kids who were graduating, that they're so lucky to be born in India. You said it's India or China. This is 2010, 9, 10, somewhere there. And you were actively in. You said they're incredibly lucky to be born in India or China. And if they cannot capitalize on being born in India or China and being young and starting their careers, then, nothing can help you. A kind of a message. I was full of energy. So you were clearly all in back in 2009 and 10. And clearly you were one of the early ones who took a call, and you played a massive role in this whole ecosystem enablement, if I can say that. So thank you for doing that. Rajan, I'll switch gears a little bit. Maybe let's actually go straight to the heart of, what we are trying to cover in this summit. We've seen 2 or 3, of course, we saw one mini cycle in India of venture funding in, 14 and 15. And then we saw a little bit of a winter for a year or two. I remember you and I sat down in 2016, 17. WaterBridge was getting started. So thanks for all the advice that you gave in those early years about how to navigate and build an interesting portfolio. But, we've seen a massive cycle after that. Look at the last 3 years, right? Culminating with what happened last year with 42 billion, whatever number we want to believe, of new funding last year. Of course, we're seeing what's happening in the macro. We're starting to see the effect on the private markets in US. And India may not have caught that fever yet, but the reality is it anytime can catch that fever, and maybe this exuberance in private markets will stop. And so, our reason for picking this particular topic was that we feel in many cases in India, valuations have run ahead of real value in businesses. If you believe in that, first of all, I don't know if you believe in that, but if you do, it'll be good to hear your views on, what kind of advice do you give to both as an angel investor and of course as Serge and Sequoia? Is it a different envelope? If it's a different template of advice you're going to give founders today as they look forward for the next few years, or versus what it was maybe back in 2020 or 2021?
Yeah, no, I think, look, the advice doesn't really change, right? At Sequoia, Manish, as you know, and Anjali, I spend all my time with Serge. Look, at Serge, our focus is very clear, right? Focus on building enduring companies. Market cycles will come and go. Fundraising will either become easier or harder depending on the cycle. But one thing is very clear, right? Building an enduring company takes 10, 20 years, and building an enduring company is extraordinarily hard. And you don't become an enduring company until you generate insane amounts of cash, right? There is no enduring company that's breaking even. That doesn't exist. So, and that's a message that is a constant sort of message. I think last year, as you rightly pointed out, really, all of 2021, every company was getting funded, right? It didn't matter. We saw this at seed stage, right? We pass on companies and then literally a week later, it get funded. And similarly, series A's, B's, C's, D's, all letters of the alphabet, right? Companies are raising lots and lots of capital. That has started changing, Manish. So that's already started changing in India, because we see it, in the Sequoia, because, we have a vantage point of series A, seed, series A, B, C, across the board, except for the truly special companies. And the special companies are defined as, they've got very, very viable unit economics. They've got market leadership. They've got very strong management teams, and they are able to consistently grow, right? So Shailendra, my partner, coined this term called the economic engine, right? They've got very strong economic engines. Except for those companies, Manish, everybody else is going to struggle to raise money this year. Doesn't matter whether it's a Series A, Series B, Series C, and even at all levels in India, we've already seen pricing adjust, right? So Series A's that could have been north of 50 million, 60, 70, 80 million pre, in some cases north of 100, as you know. Those are all down to sort of 30, 40, sometimes 25, right? Yeah, so pricing has really changed. And this was bound to happen, right? Like anytime a market goes up as fast as it did in this post during the COVID era, COVID's sort of interesting, right? First 3-4 months, things were really, really quiet. And then they just picked up and they just kept accelerating till almost Q4 of 2021. So pricing has definitely started adjusting, I think. And then what's happened, obviously, since the Ukraine-Russia war is, I think there's a lot of concern, right? I mean, there is a lot of concern about what's going to happen to the global macro with the oil prices. Will we have a World War III or not? I mean, it doesn't look like Russia is going to take Ukraine anytime soon. They eventually will, but so that's all that is concerned. So what do you do in this context, right? I think one, if you've raised a lot of money, please don't spend it. Because if you just go spend it, you're raising your next round at the valuation.
I just heard a term the other day, husband your cash is what.
Yeah, I don't know whether husband or wife, but but yes, I think being very prudent with the capital that you've raised, I think, is very important. And second, I think you've got to just focus on the basics, right? Do you have an economic engine or not? I mean, like I still have companies that are trying to launch a Series A with like no economic engine, right? I mean, they have no way in which they're going to make real money, right? I mean, GMV is not money, as you know. I mean, negative contribution is a terrible place to be. So I think just focusing on get real. It's time to 2021 is the year of get real, Manish and Anjali. And I think it's good. I think it's very healthy for founders because, see, the thing is, you've got to understand, right? Until you start generating free cash flow, you're living in borrowed money. And the only thing you can hope for, Manish and Anjali, is somebody's going to buy you out. Because if you go public, welcome to the new world. Just look at what's happened to the public stocks. But yes, there's been a global correction, but it's get real. The moment of get real for a startup is when they go public. Because, public market investors aren't going to buy all these narratives and stories about like GMV is going to grow and eventually I'm going to have a take rate and maybe I'll generate cash flow. Bang, 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 bang. Your stock's down 50%, 60%. It's down 70%. Welcome to the real world. So, what founders should do is don't wait till you go public. Start doing it from the very early days of, just building what is considered. I mean, like, a lot of startups are not building businesses. They're like, they've got good products and they just assume that eventually a business is going to show up. Like businesses don't show up. You've got to architect your business from the very early days. And I think, so my advice is if you raise the money, don't spend the money, focus on building the business. And if you're trying to raise, make sure you can raise, because if you're still living in 2020, and Manish and Anjali, a lot of Indian founders are living in 2021. It's March 15th. What is today? March 16th, 2022? Yeah. I mean, we are living in a different world. So I'm amazed. There's so many Indian founders are still living in 2021.
And Rajan, just to kind of take this conversation back to your own, personal growth journey. Surge was a new brand within Sequoia, and it was, if I can say, a startup within Sequoia, and you really had to build out that brand. So in this own scale-up journey of yours, what were some of the things that you had to relearn and unlearn and relearn, as we say, in the early days of launching Surge with new playbooks?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, firstly, I didn't launch Surge, right? So Shailendra, my partner, launched Surge with the other partners. I joined sort of in our second cohort, right? So 100% of the credit of Surge goes to Shailendra and the team that actually launched Surge. Look, I mean, for us, a lot of it has been learning about what does it really take to take a company from 0 to 1, right? My single biggest learning has been product market fit is really, 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 really hard. most startups never get it. That's why they never actually will ever have a shot of being enduring, because if you don't have product market fit, all you're doing is you're telling a story and you're fundraising, and eventually your money's going to run out. So I would say, look, we've spent a lot of time, if you look at it, so I mean, look, our investments are really focused on, we are fundamentally betting on founders, which everybody does. We spend a fair bit of time trying to understand the thesis, can this become a very large company kind of thing? But then, we are, 30% of our investments are pre-launch companies. Another third have just launched with absolutely no PMF, and maybe 1/3 of the companies have early signs of PMF, right? So that's the profile of Surge. Now, when they start the program, which is when the world sees the companies, they have all launched. So if you look at our current cohort, they're all in market with something, right? But actually, when we made those investments, because we have an always-on investment program, we have applications that sort of we close, but then we're meeting companies every single week, deciding on companies. So basically, what I'd say is so we've actually we've changed our content fair bit to focus a lot more on, how to get to product market fit. What does it look like? What does it really take? Because that is the key, right? I would say that's the first big thing. I think the second thing is, look, we've also figured out that, for instance, like it's better to bet. I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? But it's better to bet on a very, very strong founding team pre-launch than an okay founding team that actually maybe even has PMF with momentum, because that company that is an okay founding team with momentum and even PMF will only go so far, right? And we see that. So we see some of our companies that do fine. They're never going to be enduring, but that's okay. But we see, on the other hand, right, companies that are pre-launched that have very, very strong founders. We've seen that. And then, by the way, we've also seen, we focus a lot on building an economic engine. But even within the Surge portfolio, right? I mean, we've had over 60% of our companies raise Series A. Actually, we have some cohort where it's been 90% of the cohort raises Series A. But now that we're in our 6th cohort, we've had companies within Surge that haven't worked. And they haven't worked because, exactly to this point, is they just didn't focus on building an economic engine, right? And if you don't have an economic engine, the thing is, look, you can raise a Series A. You're a very good founder. You've got a story. You've got some early metrics. At least in 2021, you could have. 2019, you could have. 2020 was a little harder. You would have raised a Series A, right? So, but the question really is, what do you do once you raise your Series A? Do you really do the right things to get to PMF, to figure out whether you can build an economic engine, that kind of thing?
So, Rajan, I just want to maybe double down on one of the threads you picked on. When it's so early, right, at the stage that Surge comes in, of course, everybody does not have a PMF at that stage, and you still got to use the crystal ball to figure out that this company A has a better chance of doing a better PMF and in a finite period of time. What are sort of some of the guiding philosophies? I mean, this is again keeping in mind both founders who are pitching to early stage investors, whether it's Surge or others, but also from an investment point of view, that crystal ball, like what are some of the guiding philosophies? Is it calls on broad sectors, certain kind of founder traits, or anything else? It'll be interesting to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, so I think before I'll answer that, Manish, but I think the first thing is, by the way, one of our big learnings is that you can't sort of say you're going to get to PMF in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, right? It may take you 6 months, it may take you 3 years. But what we're very clear of, until you find it, please don't do anything else. Meaning keep the team small, keep iterating, get to PMF, because if you don't get to PMF, it doesn't really matter, right? And that's where, our Surge companies, right? Because we invest 1 to 2 million, and then 80% of our companies are co-investors. We've co-invested with you guys as well. On average, our Surge company raises, $2 to $3 million on average. Some of them may raise a lot more than that. So what that provides our founders, Manish and Anjali, is it gives them the luxury to actually focus on getting to PMF as opposed to raising their next round, right? So this was one of the, it's been the single biggest, probably, I've had so many learnings for myself because, I used to be a scale-up guy, right? I'm not a 0 to 1 guy. So everything I know about 0 to 1, I've learned at Surge, and then, investing in all these companies as an angel, is that you can't really predict whether it's going to take 3 months or 6 months. But what you can predict is, please get to PMF. Otherwise, you're not going to have a business. So, it's amazing. We had Surge 1, we're just finishing up 3 years at Surge, right? We have a company in our first cohort that just got to PMF 3 years later. 3 years later. Yeah, amazing, right? And like, actually, we have a company in, I think, our fourth cohort that raised this massive Series A, but they were really smart. They didn't have PMF. They were a massive Series A, right? They have all the money in the bank, Manish, all of it, because the interest covers their OPEX. A team of 7. Wow. And they just keep iterating, right? Every month we meet them, they're like, hey, retention's improving. And, I think maybe they're 2-3 months away. And now it's getting, it's been a year. It's been 14 months since the Series A,
But they're being sensible with their cash, is what
they're
you're
being
saying.
really sensible, right? Because again, the point is they could have spent all their money, they could have driven for growth, etc. Anyway, so that's now coming back to what do we look for? Look, at the end of the day, we just over-index on founders, right? Is there founder market fit? Does this seem like, team? I mean, one of the things, like the only thing we're really looking for in a pitch is deep insight. Tell us something that we've never thought of that makes us go, wow. Wow, as in an insight about the problem, right? And this is one of the things a lot of founders don't realize about their pitches, is like, we're looking for like insight about the problem, right? Then, we do a lot of ref checks, like massive amounts. Founders don't realize. We do just massive ref checks. Actually, while a founder is pitching, most likely, 3 ref checks have already been done in the 45 minutes. We pinged X, Y, and Z and whatever, right? So,
amazing.
We do that. I mean, it's not unusual for us to do 10 ref checks on a Surge founder, right? So we do that. Then we try to figure out, look, can this founder sort of story tell? Can they build a team? So anyway, all this kind of stuff that we look for a team. I think on the space, like, yeah, I mean, I think because Sequoia is a multi-stage investor, right? So, seed, venture, growth. We're also a multi-regional investor. We invest a lot in the US, in China, now in Europe. We have sort of a global view on, sort of what sectors are interesting, what could you do, what could you not do, that kind of thing. And we leverage a fair bit of that. And, if something has launched, then we look at some early data to say, we don't expect, by the way, to see PMF at seed, right? And as I said, a third of the companies we invest in are pre-launch. There's nothing to look at, really. But even the ones that I've looked at, we don't really expect to see PMF. But what we do expect to hear from the founders is how they're going to approach their path to PMF. For instance, it will help if the founders tell us, here's how we're thinking about getting to PMF. If they can't say that, highly unlikely we'll sort of make them a Surge company because, they haven't even thought about the basics of getting to PMF. Right?
Very interesting. If it's okay, I'll start picking some questions from the chat and Q&A. They're all in, all over. Let me pick this one. It talks about, India, is it at the forefront of real deep tech innovation versus more services models, more unique to India and Bharat and India specific problems? Do you see that changing in any significant way, let's say in this decade by 2030? Or, when you put that lens of an investor or founders are looking to what kind of a problem should I solve? Of course, they got to be passionate about it and have unique insights in some special angle, as you mentioned. But do you see service innovation versus deep tech product innovation mix changing from India? I mean, one of the question is.
I think it's a great question. Look, I think what Indian entrepreneurs are really, really good at is business model innovation, right? What did Jio really do? Jio didn't invent 4G, right? Jio basically came up with a way to deliver, a gigabit of data at 15 rupees or 25 rupees now or 30 rupees now and make money on it, right? So, and you see this time and time again, right? What was Flipkart? Flipkart was basically e-commerce, and they innovated for India, right? So they did a lot of things that were very India specific. So I think we are very, very good at that. I think the second thing that we're very good at is, sort of competing, leveraging the India advantage to compete globally. So Freshworks, right? Freshworks. So you talk to Girish, he's competing in red oceans. That's their stated strategy, right? They're not going to try to go win blue oceans. So, and I think there's just a massive, by the way, I don't know whether you know this, Manish, India's share of global SaaS is 2%.
Yeah, I knew it was sub 10%, but just 2%. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, 3 years ago, we didn't have any SaaS unicorns. Now we have like 15 SaaS unicorns. We have 2% global market share. So that means like we could easily have like 500 unicorns or whatever, right? Now, anyway, so those are the things I think we're really good at. Now, I do think this year we will, over the next decade, we will see real innovation, right? So I can't tell you the exact company, but I mean, we are currently Roy, who's one of our partners, deep tech partners. He's evaluating a company that you wouldn't see in India, just wouldn't see. And this is like a massive bet for us, right? It'll be like, oh wow, let's just, if it works, it'd be super cool, but it may not work. So I think we will begin to see.
And this is just, sorry, interrupt. Is this hardware plus software?
Yeah,
is it?
Yeah. Okay. It's not pure software. So and then we even within the search portfolio, right? We have some companies like Last9. We have a bunch of companies that are doing some stuff that one would consider to be deep tech, right? Dev tools. I mean, and so on and so forth, right? We have within the Sequoia portfolio, we have companies like Bioformis, which is doing AI in healthcare. So I think we will begin to see a lot more of this as the skill base in the country continues, and so on and so forth. But my view is, Manish, that there is so much opportunity, right, for business model innovation. I mean, let's look at agriculture. I mean, India, 20% of India's GDP is in agriculture. There's been very little innovation, right? We made our first ag tech investment 3 years ago. Now we have about 6 or 7 companies. We will easily have, just within our portfolio, 5 unicorns by 2025 in ag. Why? Because I mean, it's like $100 billion, it's a multi-$100 billion space that has had no innovation, right? Now, is that deep tech? Absolutely not. But do I want deep tech in it? No. I want to make lives of farmers better, right? I want to streamline supply chain. So anyway, it's a long answer to your question. We will see deep tech, but deep tech for the sake of deep tech is a bad idea, right? Deep tech to solve problems is a really interesting idea. So if you look at Bioformis, they use AI in healthcare to actually, solve problems in healthcare, right? So that's interesting.
Yeah. Super interesting. And of course, in the purest definition of deep tech, a lot of other things in the ecosystem also have to come together, which we do lack. It is going to be on a slow gradient, as you said, but the focus should be on solving real and large problems. Very interesting. I'll pick another question. Product market fit, somebody's asking, a couple of people are asking, gets talked about a lot, lots of definitions. Is there an easy way to define what product market fit is?
Actually, there's no easy way to define it, other than, you do hear people saying you know it when you have it. And that is very true, because, it just becomes less harder, But what I can say, Manish, and within Search, we've done this now, for every kind of business, right? If you're an edtech company doing XYZ, or if you're a gaming company, if you're a social commerce company, if you're a B2B SaaS company focused on US mid-market, you're a B2B SaaS company focused on US enterprise. For every kind of company, we are now at a point where we can sort of tell you what it should roughly be. Okay, so let's take one short video app in India. Okay, so what was TikTok? TikTok monthly retention was 40%. Okay, that was the best. So if your monthly retention as a short video app in India is 13%, you have no PMF, like none, zero. Why? Because 87% of your customers are gone at the end of month 3. Now, if you're 33%, actually you're pretty good, because the world's best was 40, right? And we have a few apps that I think are getting maybe not to 40, but getting in that high 20s, early 30s, right? So if you're that, and for instance, if you take a SaaS company, right? Let's say you're telling a revenue first SaaS company, i.e., you're selling to the US, maybe you're selling to mid-market or to enterprise. I mean, look, quite frankly, if it's really hard for you to sell, if you've got a 15K ACV and it takes you 6 months to close a deal, you don't have PMF, because you just don't. The math will never work. So what I'd encourage founders to do is, depending on all of you are building a specific kind of business, talk to your mentors. If you have investors, talk to them, and really try to understand, we have a company called Veera Health, right? Veera is basically a digital health company that's focused on PCOS. There are 100 million women in India, right? So for them, it was very clear. They have like 4 or 5 metrics they're trying to hit: renewal rates, NPS, gross margin, and CAC. If they can hit those 4 metrics, they'll have PMF. And by the way, they've been spending the last year trying to get to these 4 metrics. To my point, it doesn't happen in 3 months, because you've got to get to these before you start scaling. Because if you start scaling before that, it's going to be a leaky bucket.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Very interesting. Anjali, I think you have a question.
Yeah. Rajan, given the context that you've just set on, the dark winter ahead, if I may, and there are a lot of founders here possibly looking to pitch to us as, young professionals looking to start up this year. Any words of wisdom or advice on what they should be doing differently, as you said, in 2022, and what should we be doing?
Should they even do it? Should they still do it?
Of course, I think these periods are much better to start up because you get real. You've got to solve a real problem. You've got to build a solution that people want to buy. Ideally, they're going to pay you more for it than it costs for you to make. Simple things like if you're selling for less than what it costs you, that's not a business. That's you go raise money from somebody else and subsidize it till you, and then you hope for the best, right? So, by the way, some of the most interesting companies on the planet have been formed, have been founded during periods like this, right? Stripe was founded in sort of period like this. PayPal was founded in a period like this, and it kind of goes on. So, yeah, I think it's a great time to be starting. The only thing is, like make sure I think not a lot of founders when they start up ask this question of, is this really going to be your life's work, right? Have you found a problem that you're so passionate about? And by the way, it's fine to discover, right? You do explore, you try to find different types of problems. But like, is this a problem that you're so passionate about where you can see yourself spending the next 10, 15, 20 years? Because if you're going to build an enduring company, it's going to take that long, right? And the reality is you're going to have 4 or 5 near-death moments along the way. And the only thing that's going to keep you going is, you just really, really want to solve this problem. Otherwise, you're just going to give up and move on and, sell the company or whatever it is, which is also fine. But, you want to build a great company. So I think it's a great time to be starting up. But you got to I think the year for this year, Anjali and Manish, is get real.
Get real. That's the message.
Get real.
Got it. Super interesting. Rajan, we're sensitive of time. Maybe one thing where we sort of started this chat was, something personal. And this is and I know you for many years, but I've always wanted to ask you, like, I've been on many boards with you. I've been on monthly MISs with you and new investment calls. You bring this, 200% energy to every meeting. You're always over-prepared. You read everything. How do you manage to do all of this? Is there like a personal secret you want to share with, 100 plus participants that are here right now?
Zero inbox. Every single day. Zero inbox.
Is it all bots or you make it happen?
No. I read. I obviously, I do have a system that screens things, but I read everything. So, actually, the zero inbox thing is very helpful, especially for those of you that are running. I don't know how many of these founders ever, if you have more than 30, 40 people, you're probably scaling pretty fast. If you don't have PMF and you have 30 people, please be worried. You have too many people. I can't tell you how much of that I see now. Companies have 40 people, they have no PMF. It's like a real big problem. But like once you have a certain number of people, it's very important to have zero inbox because otherwise your team is waiting to hear from you. Yeah. Right. And you don't want to do that. And the other thing is, look, if you're going to go into a meeting, you might as well be prepared because otherwise, what's the point, right? Like Jugaad doesn't scale, Manish.
Yeah.
And most entrepreneurs love Jugaad. The problem is that one of the reasons most entrepreneurs don't scale is, they think Jugaad scales. Jugaad doesn't scale.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess in all your humility, you did say, I'm not saying I'm agreeing with it, but you did say that you don't want to be in a room where you're the smartest person. So essentially, you're also saying that you would rather prepare, work hard, and show up with your full 100%.
Yeah,
very
yeah.
Interesting.
By the way, there was a question on what is the full form of PMF. It's product market fit.
Yeah, product market fit. Perfect. And you've already given your view on how you look at product market fit. Very interesting. There were some things in the chat, but I'm not going to pick those up just in the interest of time. Rajan, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for your time and your words of wisdom. Any parting message for this audience? This is primarily mostly entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs.
No, I think, look, Manish and Anjali, first of all, thanks for having me. And founders, it's great to always be able to spend time with founders. Look, I think the next decade, Manish, I'll probably wrap with this, right? In many ways, everything we've seen so far is the trailer. India's GDP per capita is $2,000. I'll tell you, we always also invest across Southeast Asia. Indonesia has $4,000 per capita. Indonesia's e-commerce market with 250 million people is larger than India, growing double the rate. Okay, so what does that really mean? What that means is the best is yet to come. Right. So if you're starting a company now, if you're building a company now, I mean, it's just going to get superbly interesting every year that goes by. Markets will get deeper, talent markets will get deeper, etc. So yes, this year is obviously going to be tougher, but I think it's good to get real. I think getting real, the earlier in your career that you can get real, earlier in your startup's journey that you can get real. Because see, by the time you're valued at $5 billion and you lose $30 million a month, it's hard to get real. It's like, how do you get real?
Little too late.
Little too late. So then basically the only strategy you have is hope. And hope is not a strategy. So I think it's just a great time to be building a company. I wish everybody all the very best. And keep in mind, it's 2022, and 2022 is not 2021.
Get real, and then when you get real, you can rev it up.
Exactly. Get real and rev it up. We added that.
Rajan, so nice to have you here. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.